Welcome to the Dear Doc Podcast, where we will discuss the business of running a dental practice with a panel of experts. Now, your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Dear Doc Podcast. I'm coming to you here live from my studio in Alvin, Texas. This is the new studio. And so we've had some technical difficulties this morning, and nothing I won't be able to figure out if I hold my IT guy's feet over the hot coals, but we'll take care of that later. So today we are joined by someone I'm sure most of you know, and that is Dr. Ryan Dunlop. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just great, Chris. How are you?
Man, I'll tell you what, couldn't be better. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon, been playing out in the sunshine with the kids. They're chasing lizards and bugs and all sorts of stuff. And in fact, actually, I got to meet your boy just a couple of seconds ago, and he showed me some of the coolest faces I think I've seen on an interview so far.
He's an expert. Absolutely. He's an expert in silly faces.
So guys, in a departure from our usual programming during this COVID crisis, we had begun doing a mini series on the podcast. And what it was an exploration of the different ways that people practice dentistry. And basically, it's an exploration of all the different business models that work. So, Ryan, you're a very surgically oriented dentist, and you own an extremely large practice. It's very profitable. You teach other people to do what you do. I would call you, at the risk of sounding gauche, I would call you a super GP or a surgically specialized GP. What are your thoughts on that terminology? What would you prefer, if anything else?
No, I think that the term super GP is kind of appropriate. I just think it has a growing negative connotation amongst some of the communities out there. I just consider myself to be a truly comprehensive care clinic. So there's very few aspects of my care that are referred out to, outside practices. Not 100% of what I do is done in-house, but a good 90% of it. So whether it's done by me or by associates or specialists who come into the practice, I just feel like I can provide a really comprehensive treatment facility. So that's kind of the moniker that I like to be known as truly comprehensive care, rather than the term super GP is.
Right. No, I feel you, man. Whenever it first came out, I kind of rolled my eyes. And then I realized how few people were doing that many specialty services in-house, and how much most people refer out. It kind of grew on me. And now, like you said, there's kind of a bad taste in your mouth because they have some guys out there, dentists. Have you met dentists? But anyway, so a comprehensive practice is what you're running. But the business model that you're running is, I think, a really interesting one. And you and I have spoken at great length on the different types of things that you do in your practice and the systems you have in place, and what all is under one roof. So I'd like you to just briefly explain to everyone the size of your practice and what all you've got under one roof.
Sure. So in my practice, I run 6 operatories. Right now, it's me plus an associate dentist who's been with me for a few months, and I bring in a endodontic specialist every couple of weeks. So basically, I've got 3 doctors working under one roof. One of those rooms is dedicated to hygiene full time, and that's I work Monday through Thursday, but the associate and the hygienist work Monday through Friday. So more or less 3 doctors working throughout the day. I have about 6 or 7 back office assistants. I have 3 hygienists and about 6 or 7 front office employees. Right. And then I've got a completely separate business under my roof, which is my lab business. Right. I decided last year, maybe a year and a half ago, to basically bring the entire production lab operation under my roof. At the time, I was spending anywhere from 40 to 50 grand a month on lab bills. And it's not that I couldn't afford it. It was becoming my biggest expense. And when I sit down at the beginning of the year and I plan out my year, one of the things that I do is I look at my three biggest expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So the big three for me were, payroll, supplies, and lab. So I figure at the beginning of the year, how can I control these by 5 or 10% over the course of the next 12 months? And eventually it just became impossible for me to try to control the lab expenses. They were getting higher and higher and higher as I was getting busier. And at the time, I had a lab technician working for me, just doing model work and pouring up stuff and setting teeth in wax. And I decided, well, if I purchase the entire lab equipment, can we hire some more people and get a lab going? And he said, yeah, I think we can. So I bought milling equipment and scanning equipment and, intraoral scanners, and went fully digital all within about 12 months. And so now I have 6 or 7 lab employees as well. So total staff of about 25 or something like that. Which is a lot to manage, and we're pretty cramped in the space we are. 6 ops, 25 people.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty cramped space.
Well, they say that there's a very specific equation whenever you're looking at management, and that is that each manager can manage 5 subordinates well. And once you get past 5 subordinates, things become really, really kind of chaotic. But whenever you get past, say 25 or 30 people, you're really looking at growing a large middle management team. And
and that's what I have.
Entirely different set of systems too. So you've
absolutely
had to systemize your practice, you've had to systemize your management team, and you've had to systemize your lab. So I find that fascinating. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So I don't have an office manager. I am the office manager. What I have is a system where we have coordinators for each department. So I have a lab coordinator, I have a front office coordinator, back office coordinator, hygiene coordinator. I meet with those coordinators weekly, and it's a meeting of about, like you said, 4 or 5 people. Those are the people that I specifically manage. So that's my cohort. Now, each one of those coordinators has a responsibility to manage 4 or 5 people in their departments. So the lab coordinators working with the designers and the finishers and the model room, shipping, ordering supplies, implant coordinators doing the same thing, back office coordinator, front office coordinator. I'm delegating responsibility to coordinators that I'm meeting with regularly, and they are in turn delegating responsibility to the employees. And then each department has meetings weekly, and there's one big staff meeting that happens, but I'm not there for it. So I don't want to be there for a general meeting where there's 20 to 25 people all trying to get a chance to complain at me. So I delegate that responsibility to my coordinators, and then they are responsible for being the first line of communication for my employees. So I definitely had to set up a few different systems to be able to disseminate information and keep things organized without having to manage every single employee along the way.
So in a lot of practices, what we find is that there is a front to back animosity. And you've actually got a 4-sector practice as far as I'm concerned. You've got your front, you've got your back, you have middle management, and you have your lab. So how do you deal with the interactions between those departments, or is it, as you say, you basically your coordinators just deal with it and you don't have any part of it, or do you have some sort of system where there's not a whole lot of finger pointing when something goes wrong? Because inevitably, no matter how well you run things, something goes wrong.
Yeah, I have found over the years, and my office is no different from everybody else's. We have tension between front office and back office, and sometimes there's miscommunications and unrealistic expectations. What I have found is the most beneficial is cross training. So taking your front office coordinators and putting them in the back office and having them work alongside your team in the back office, and having lab personnel working in the front office, trying to share the understanding of what the job entails, is a huge asset. I think most tension in this world is due to miscommunication. And if there's tension between your back office and your front office, most of the time it's a miscommunication, and the team members not understanding what the roles are of each individual person. So if the patients are sitting in the waiting room and they're barking about waiting too long to be taken back. The front office is then just communicating that to the back office, and the back office feels this pressure, like we got to, like we're not performing at a high enough level. So if you take the person at the front desk and you put them in the back office and you have them help for a couple hours, they see how hard they're working, and they are more likely to defend their coworker rather than create tension and animosity between them. So I do a lot of cross training. My lab personnel understand the treatment planning process. My treatment planners understand the lab process. My insurance billers understand patient flow, and it helps with the team aspect of it.
So you said something there that two things really I want to address. And the first is there's a lot of people out there who will say, if you don't have your team specialized in doing a specific job or set of duties, then they're never as efficient as they possibly could be. And you're really pulling away from that person's potential whenever you split their duties and make them cross-train. That's one argument. I disagree with it, but that's one argument that'll come out of this. And another thing I noticed is whenever you were talking about the front people carping at the back for not being as efficient as they could be, you said we, meaning you were part of the back. How hard is it still with the size practice that you do? And I know about this because you and I have spoken about it before, to take off the doctor hat and put on the CEO hat. Because while you were just talking about that, you slipped into the doctor hat. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So can you address those 2 points?
Well, if I'm going to be honest, probably the biggest limitation that I have in my practice is I don't have enough time to wear that CEO hat, because I am so clinically oriented and so busy with patient care all the time that I struggle to find time to switch hats and put that CEO hat on. And that's something that I'm working on all the time, to try and carve out time in my schedule to be the business owner as well as the doctor. So I kind of think that we have to wear those hats simultaneously. It's not a matter of switching back from one to the other. It's a matter of managing both together. For me, it's a challenge logistically. I'm to the point where if I can carve out 2 to 3 hours in my afternoon before I go home to be the CEO, that would be the best thing for me. Because I'm a sedation practice, my mornings are pretty much always sedation and surgical. So, that takes priority, that pays the bills. So, the afternoons, I'm trying to create time for myself to be that CEO and to sit in my office and do the work to keep the business aspect flowing as well. But that's a challenge. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's probably the biggest challenge that I face right now, is balancing running the business aspect versus a bustling clinic.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike. It always feels as if you have to choose one thing or the other. And
sometimes it feels that way.
A lot of times as doctors and business owners, our family is what suffers, because we end up choosing the business because we have to, because that's what feeds the family. It's hard to break out of that cycle. So
it is very hard. And as you get bigger and busier, it's tempting to just dive further into that rabbit hole rather than pull back. Because if you have the best month ever in your practice and you're killing it and you're having fun and everyone's in a good mood, well, what's the first thing you do? You set a goal to go a little further the next month. And you're like, well, if we hit 200,000, 300,000 in production this month, can we get to 250, 350? Can we get to 400,000 in 1 month? And if you push yourself hard enough, you will get there. But then what are you giving up on the back end?
Yeah. When you say yes to one thing, you say no to another always. But it's, I know you're involved in a project right now that actually is, honestly, I think it's very wholesome thing. You invited me to come and talk with you as well. And it's about overcoming these challenges as dentists and sharing our experiences and our failures. Because, a lot of people look at a practice like yours, or they look at a practice like mine, and his practice is way cooler than mine, by the way, guys. I want to be Ryan when I grow up. So, but I want to work 3 days a week still. So I don't know if I can find the path there, but
it's possible.
So I think that I think you should share a little bit about that that endeavor with the group
Yeah.
in this
Well,
area?
it comes from a great doctor, Jeff Busky. He came out to my training program a couple months ago, and we just struck a chord on trying to find balance in our lives. And he's got this philosophy that success revolves around a few different topics. Your fitness is part of it, your finances is part of it, and your faith is part of it, and your family is a big part of it. So doctors like us, we have to force ourselves to pull back and focus on the things that need to be focused on. It's easy to focus on one or two of those things, but if you were to ask the majority of dentists and doctors in this country who are divorced and who are out of shape and suffering financially and suffering psychologically, they would tell you that excelling in one of those categories is not worth the detriment to the others.
Yeah.
And as a 40-something-year-old dentist who has a super busy, super profitable, cutting edge practice, it would be very easy for me to just focus on that. That would give me a lot of satisfaction in my life at this point. However, if it were at the expense of those other things I mentioned, when I become a 50 or 60-year-old dentist and I've lost some of those things, I would regret my choice.
And time's something you can never get back. Money you can always make more of.
Yeah, money and success. It's more fun to enjoy those things when you're taking advantage of the others as well.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if that gives
Well
up a
put.
little bit of dollars if that balance forces me to give up a little bit of the success factor, then so be it.
So, with that being said, in order to have a practice like you do, there is a vast array of knowledge that's needed. And full disclosure, guys, I'm planning on going to Ryan's CE. He really knows his shit. So you've got differing areas of expertise. You are an absolute expert in digital workflow. Even though you and I disagree on one thing, which is I like guided implants and you do not like them. But I guess we can agree to disagree about that over a beer. But you have a vast amount of knowledge and technical ability whenever it comes to the digital side of dentistry, the lab portion of dentistry, the actual patient management and planning portion of dentistry, the clinical stuff,
Sure.
the meat and potatoes. So where did you get your training and how long of a road was that? Now, you and I are about the same age, but I believe you got out a tiny bit earlier than I did. So when did you graduate and what was your road forward to becoming this, ostensibly comprehensive surgical center?
Graduated in 2006. Most of the people in my class went on to be specialists. They went to specialty programs. When I told my dean that I wanted to be a general dentist, he laughed in my face. He said that was kind of a disappointment for him because he envisioned me going on to oral surgery or prosthodontics or something like that. And I said, no, I really want to be, known as a general dentist. So I went to a GPR program in New York City, and I stayed there for 2 years. It was a really nice program. It was again pretty comprehensive care. It was a VA program, so we had patients needing everything, and there was not enough dentists to serve them. So they really depended on the residents to do a lot of the comprehensive work. So I got to do a lot of surgical work. I got to do a lot of implant work. I got to do a lot of prosthodontics, removable and fixed pros in my residency. So after 2 years, I was definitely set to make a splash wherever I landed, and I took a job as an associate. And I found this practice through an implant rep. I called the rep in the city where I wanted to move to, and I said, can you help me find a doctor who's placing implants, because I want to do sedation and implants and be a general dentist focusing on that. So she actually called around and found a practice for me that fit the bill, and I flew out and interviewed with him, and we agreed that it was a good place for me to start. So I show up on my first day, and he's got a patient sedated for me. He's running the sedation and I'm doing the dentistry. And he tells me to go pull tooth number 30 and put an implant in. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I had experience, but I was still a newbie and I'd never worked on a sedated patient before. So I walked into the room and I introduced myself. He gave him some medicines. He went to sleep and I got to work, and I think I sweat buckets. I mean, I was absolutely terrified. And I got through it and, never looked back. I got my sedation certification later that year so I could run my own sedations. And it just took off. I trained by doing. I never took any like training courses. I didn't do any of these continuums, implant continuums. I just learned by doing. And if I needed help, if I had questions on things, I'd contact the reps for certain companies. I would reach out to a few mentors that I had, but it was really a trial by fire. I started to do singles and then 2 or 3 unit implant bridges, and then bigger cases and bigger cases. And I made myself uncomfortable a lot. That was the bottom line. And there was a lot of times where I was doing things for the first time.
Finding the ability to be comfortable being uncomfortable is the only way that you can really grow your skill set. You've got to
That's very
the
true.
ability to live there.
Yeah. And you have to put yourself in a situation where you're a little uncomfortable, and you have to rely on your knowledge and your skill set to get you through it. And at the end of it, then you're just a little bit better and a little bit faster and a little bit more comfortable. And over time, I developed a muscle memory for things. And so I can't really credit any specific education program other than my residency. But the residency was basically just a free-for-all. The attendings were doing their own thing, and they didn't really watch us that much. So I was free to do whatever I wanted. Yeah. So it was my education was really just a trial by fire. I got into full arch cases in residency and trying to push the limits on what was able to be done. And then when I got into practice, I think that was about 2008 is when I came out as an associate. And that's right when the housing bubble, crashed. And our housing bubble popped. And so I'm a new associate. I'm in this practice, and then boom, everything explodes. And the owner was scrambling to pay his bills, and he was in debt, and he was in trouble. And I just looked at him and I said, "Hey, why don't we run an ad in the newspaper that says 50% off dental implants? Let's just try it. You love doing implants. I love doing implants. Let's just put an ad in the paper and see what happens." So we put an ad in the newspaper saying 50% off dental implants, and we were flooded. I mean, we got smothered in new patients right when that crash happened. So when everyone was panicking, I think we doubled our production in that month because we did this ad campaign. So he stuck with it. He stuck with that 50% off dental implants ad for about 10 years.
Wow. It worked for all 10 years?
It worked for all 10 years. So even though the economy recovered, he stayed with that 50% off dental implants ad forever. And I eventually left the practice and opened up my own place about 5 or 6 years ago. And I believe he was still running that ad when I left, because it just pulled people in.
So I'm curious, with his 50% off, how much was he paying Screw to Crown? Or how much was he charging?
I believe at the time, I think he was doing before we did that ad, I think he was at around $4,000, $4,500 per tooth. So for like extraction, implant, and crown. And then the 50% off, I think it dropped the implant to about $1,000 and the crown to about $1,500, something like that. So he was still around $2,500 after the half off, which is, not really half off for most offices now. But at the time, it was a big cut into his bottom line, but we stayed super busy and doubled his production for the next couple of months. So that really helped. And that's kind of the message that I'm sending to people now is don't worry about your practices. There's a huge demand for dental implants, a huge demand for surgical reconstructive dentistry. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, but Ryan,
in fact,
Ryan, hold on. Here's the deal though. Let's be honest. not everyone has your skill set. Not everybody has my skill set even.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to the wet behind the ears, got out of dental school 5 years ago, has never done any significant training, has been a regular old bread and butter PPO dentist associate for the last 5 years? What's your advice to them? And what's your advice to these guys who did a startup who've never learned any special skills? They don't know how to do anything but crown and bridge and fillies. What do you tell them?
My advice to most dentists, regardless of the environment they're in, is just focus on the quality of your care. Focus on the comprehensive nature of your care, and don't be afraid to compromise. I mean, don't compromise on the quality of your care, and then to try to get ahead. So, whether you're in a PPO office or you're in an HMO office, you're in an institution, if you consistently do good quality work, not just, the physical part, but the diagnosis and the comprehensive treatment planning, if you focus on those things and you present comprehensive care to everybody, I don't think you can fail. I don't think that you can suffer in this environment, because there's so much dentistry to be done. There's so many patients who need help. And only a small percentage of doctors actually present comprehensive care to their patients.
I agree. So that brings me to my next question, which I was going to ask you anyway. So, hey, thanks. Good segue. How do you feel about the PPO dentist in this upcoming crisis? Is this their key to freedom, or does safety come with shackles?
Good question. In my practice, when I opened, I only signed up with Delta. All the other insurances, I stayed out of network. I did a startup. I had 0 patients. I had about a month to get ready for my practice. It was kind of a fast transition from me being an associate to me being an owner. And I could have very, very easily just signed up for every PPO under the sun for that security blanket, but I knew that was a trap. I knew that that was basically me giving away 40 to 50% of my production in order to get patients. And I would have rather just spent that money on advertising. So I stayed out of network. I kept my fee schedule pretty high.
Hold on. I'm going to make a small argument here. Small argument here. So the guys who are PPO practices, they are spending 40% of their income on marketing.
They're just not actually marketing it.
Right, because that's what insurance is. Being a network is a marketing expense.
Yeah.
It's just a dumb one.
Well, it's not one that you can control. So,
right.
You're basically you're signing up to give away 30% of your production.
And before I get any hate mail, guys, I was a PPO practice whenever I first started. I had to fight to go out of network. I get it. I'm not picking on you guys, but it is an advertising expense, and it's an advertising expense, like Ryan said, that you can't control. And that's the big thing, because in advertising, you're spending tons of money. You need to make sure you're tracking the ROI on that advertising and being able to pivot and control the message so that you can fine tune it to get every cent out of that advertising you can. So talk to us a little bit more in that vein.
So I think this is going to be an interesting couple of years. I think that a lot of dentists are going to take this opportunity to start getting out of insurance. I think that there's a fear factor there, that people are going to lose production. But I think the adage that, every insurance that you eliminate, your production will go up a certain percentage. And I think that's absolutely true. If you have 100 patients who are on a certain plan and you drop that plan and go out of network, you're going to lose half of them. But the half that stay on with your practice because of the quality of your care, that's why I said that. They're going to stay because of the quality of your care and the patient experience. So those 50% that stay are paying more than the share that you lost from the 50% that left.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
so for every single insurance that you drop, your production should go up as long as you're providing good quality care. Now, if you're doing, really low quality work and you're doing a lot of redos and you have a lot of complaints, then that it's probably better that you focus on that part of it first before you get rid of insurances. But if you feel like, hey, my patients really enjoy the work here and they're going to stick around, going to the dentist is one of the scariest things that people will ever do. For
Absolutely.
many people, it's like top of the list phobia. So if once they find a dentist that they like and they know that the work is good quality, they're not going to leave. So if it costs them more, most of them are going to stay. So I do think that most dentists are going to take this as an opportunity. I hope they do, to start getting out of network. I'm planning on getting out of network with the last one with Delta sometime
Good
this
for
year.
you, man. Good for you.
Insurance only makes up about 10 to 12% of my revenue. So, that's a goal for most people. That's a really good number to be at, 85 to 88% cash. That's what everybody wants. So, it's not like Delta's not like holding me back, but where it does hold me back is my time.
Right.
If I have a case for sedation and it's like 8 or 9 fillings and it's a Delta patient, I might produce $1,500 off of that patient, and it might take me 3 or 4 hours to get that done. Versus a cash paying patient, it could be 4,000 or 5,000 for that same case.
Absolutely.
But so because I'm only one person, I can only do one thing at a time. Where is my money best spent? Where is my time? Not my money. Where is my time best spent in terms of what production I can produce? So being at a network really provides you with a lot of opportunities, and this financial crisis that's impending, it's gonna force a lot of people to reevaluate. We're gonna create. I always say that after one of these crisis periods, crises, we make a new normal. There was a way we lived life before 9/11, and there was a way we lived life after 9/11. The same with the AIDS epidemic. There's all these times where the world has to shift, and this is clearly one of them. And those shifts provide opportunities for industries to change the way they do things. You remember how airlines were before 9/11 and how airlines were after 9/11? I mean, it was a dramatic shift, and everyone was like, oh, God, this is never going to work. But they shifted, and they operated a different normal. So dentists can take this as an opportunity to operate in a different normal.
But the best part about that is how they shifted back, but now they make you pay for the same treatment you used to get before 9/11.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I'm in
Exactly.
the Clear Club and I've got a membership in 3 of these things. I just like walk in the airport and they're like, right this way, sir. Get in the airplane. Kick you in the ass on the way in.
Most dentists are going to have to shift the way they do things. It's going to, even me, I'm used to going from room to room to room to room to room really fast. 5-10 minutes each room. I get set up. My team is in the room before me and in the room after me. And I come in and I do the doctor step and then I'm gone. But now I have to think about personal protective equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I might not be able to go from room to room to room to room so quickly without changing everything that I have on and, changing the room over really fast. And, so there's a lot to be seen. There's a lot that we're all going to learn over the next 6 to 12 months after we get back to work. I can't say for sure how my day is going to be different. But I can tell you one thing is I'm glad that I'm not tied to PPO insurances right now, because that you're forced to spend more time setting up each room. You're forced to slow down and isolate each procedure better, and you're not going to be as able to flow from room to room to room. Who is that going to affect? That's going to affect the PPO dentist the most.
But a counterpoint to that is, are they going to begin block scheduling? Because that seems like a very intuitive thing to me. Is that they just begin scheduling? Hey, look, unless you've got $3,000 worth of work, you're not in my main chair. You get a little filling, you can go over there and you can wait, and we'll get to you when we get to you. And having one chair as a production, or maybe two chairs so their production was staggered, and a third for emergencies or minimal work. But it's going to be definitely an interesting time to see. And I honestly think that the dental models are going to fracture even further. And that's kind of what this mini series is about, is the business model that you guys are running and how they're so different, how they're all successful. It'd be very interesting to see as we come out of this on the other side, which models shine in the new normal and which ones have to make some serious changes.
I think that the offices that focus on, like what you said, production, you have to schedule according to production. In my office, we schedule categories. So there's category 1 production, there's category 2 production, category 3 and 4 and 5, I think. So category 1 production is sedation and comprehensive care. So full arch cases, bigger cases, basically $5,000 and above per appointment.
Right.
Then you've got category 2, which is between $1,000 and $5,000 in production per visit. And then you've got the smaller things in emergencies.
You're running what, a $1,500 production per hour production per chair?
Probably a little more than that.
Okay. So
yeah,
that I think would surprise a lot of dentists, because most dentists are running $200 production or $300 production per hour.
Yeah, we produce about 20 to 25,000 a day out of 6 chairs. So, run the. I can't do the math in my head, but it depends on the day too. So, but on average, I would say 1,500 to 2,000 per chair.
Whenever you got the top practice that you do, mine is kind of like someone took one of the corners off of your rectangle and they sawed it off, but it's a similar thing. I might do $55,000 one day, and the next day I'm doing 1,000.
Yeah,
and it's
it's the nature of the beast.
Exactly. So, following up on the last thing we touched on, which was these changing models. What percentage of practices do you think are going to fail coming out on the other side of this? Something I've been asking everybody, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you told me you thought it was going to be 1 out of 5. I don't know. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I'm thinking maybe 1 out of 10.
I hope you're right. I really do.
I hope I'm right. Like I said, there is going to be a lot of pent up demand for dental services, and through the summer, and hopefully most of us keep track of the patients we're taking off the schedule, and we're trying to get them back on the schedule. And as long as the dentist can weather a few months of little to no income, which hopefully I hope most of us can, then I think we're going to be fine. This pandemic, this crisis that we're in, to me, it's yeah, right. It's a plague, but it feels it's very different for our economy in one sense. We haven't had any infrastructural changes. We haven't had there's no buildings on the ground. There's no thing for us to recover from.
Except in Utah.
I mean,
Except in Utah, they've been having they've had 30 category 5 and greater earthquake, not category 5, but rather
5.0
Richter scale. That's it. They've had 30 5.0 or greater earthquakes since this began.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
But people are not talking about it because COVID.
Yeah. So everybody's ready to get back to work. Everybody is, as soon as it's deemed safe to go back to work, everybody's going to be itching to get back to work. There's not going to be a humongous fear factor of getting back to work as long as we're not hearing about COVID cases anymore. I think that everything will start up again really quickly. The question is, the long-term ramifications of all these businesses not having revenue for 2 to 3 months or 4 months at a time. We'll just have to wait and see how the markets do on that. But I think in terms of most dentists, I think we're going to be really busy. I don't think we're going to open up our doors and there's not going to be anybody there. I think the patients are going to really need to get in. Some people might be making more cost-conscious decisions on their elective care. So maybe someone who was planning on doing 20 veneers 6 months ago might not be thinking about doing 20 veneers now. But if I have to, I'll go back to doing some fillings and crowns and root canals for a few months. Why not? I mean, I don't have to do a full arch every day.
So I'm bringing on an associate now, and he is going to be coming on. He's going to be coming on as a PPO dentist, and it'll be interesting. Oh goodness! All right, I was wrong. I wanted to make sure I wasn't lying to you. Since March 18th, Utah has had 700 earthquakes. Maybe only 500 of them were over 5 or something. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get distracted, but I hate saying something and then going, "Am I remembering that right?"
Wait, was that right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Utah sounds like they've got a lot to rebuild, but the rest of us, I think it's going to be a fast return to at least normal work pace. I don't know what the workflow is going to be like, but the work pace I think is going to be there.
So, any parting words of advice for dentists out there who are worried about this, who are just looking for someone to tell them what to do in coming out of this thing?
I don't know if I'm the right person to give that advice. I think I'm in the boat too. I just know that for myself, I'm just going to stay the course. I think the worst thing that I can do is start really panicking and trying to change the way I do things to try to cut corners or cut costs or, obviously just like everybody else, this has given me an opportunity to kind of look at my finances and determine if there's fluff anywhere that I can consolidate. I think this is a great time to be doing that. I think this is a great opportunity for us to, look at our P&Ls and look at our, production and look at our expenses and try to find things that we don't necessarily need and try to consolidate our expenses. But I'm just going to stay the course. I mean, there's always going to be a demand for dentistry. I don't know if I'm going to be able to charge, what I charged before for full arch cases. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep my schedule as full as I was. Before this crisis, I was booked out 2 to 3 months at a time. And I don't know if that's going to continue. But, dentistry is very versatile. There's a lot of things we do. Whether it's cosmetic work or pain reduction or improvement of function, improvement of aesthetics, it's never going to go away. And dentistry will always be part of everybody's life. And as long as dentists focus on the quality of their care and comprehensive care, I think we're all going to be fine. The practices that were really suffering and super underwater before are the most vulnerable ones that are probably going to go under or have to be absorbed into other practices. But the practices that focus on comprehensive care and quality of care, I think we're going to be fine. I think it's just a matter of being patient and waiting for the economy to recover because it seems to always recover.
Well, if it doesn't, we're all screwed anyway.
If it doesn't, I'll come out to Texas and we'll sit on your porch and watch the kids play and drink bourbon.
That sounds like a great plan. A buddy of mine asked me yesterday, he was kind of poking the bear, trying to mess with me. Because I said, I think we're heading for a very deep recession and possibly even a depression. It just depends on a couple of factors and how we respond to them as a nation. I don't by any means think it's predetermined, but I do think that we're in dangerous ground. And he said, so you could be buying gold and stockpiling? I said, dude, you kidding me? If the end of the world's coming, I'm buying cigarettes and booze. That's the real trade goods.
And ammo.
And ammo. No kidding. Actually, you know what? I said that. Man, thank you for coming on. It's been a very engaging conversation. And I hope that some people out there have gotten something out of it. Considering.
Yeah, me too.
Considering the source,
Well, it's my pleasure, Chris. I think you do a great job in disseminating information unbiased to dentists all over the country, and I was super excited to come on and just shoot the shit with you.
Hopefully, it won't be the last time, my friend. Guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dear Doc podcast. Again, this has been an interview with Ryan Dunlop, the Comprehensive Surgical Center dentist. Is that okay if I can Comprehensive Surgical Center dentist?
I can live with that.
You guys have a great day, and thank you for sharing this time with us. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Dear Doc podcast, your source for the business and legal questions associated with your dental practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dear Doc podcast on all major platforms.